Hello everyone, welcome back to the channel. Today we're diving into a topic that is reshaping the political map of Eastern Europe and shaking the foundations of Russian power itself, the story of how Putin's grip on Kaliningrad is slipping and why the Kremlin may be losing control of this critical territory. For decades, Kaliningrad has been one of Russia's most strategic strongholds, a small but powerful enclave wedged between Poland and Lithuania, cut off from the Russian mainland, yet serving as Moscow's forward base in Europe. It's a piece of land that has given Russia access to the Baltic Sea, powerful missile systems and a strong naval presence, but as the tide of war and sanctions continue to rise, the control that once seemed absolute is now showing cracks. Kaliningrad's position has always made it a jewel in Russia's military crown. From the outside, the city presents an image of strength. It's filled with military bases, radar systems, and advanced weapons that can reach deep into European territory for years. The Kremlin has showcased it as a symbol of defiance, a sign that Russia could project power far beyond its borders, yet behind that confident exterior, a quiet storm is brewing. The region has become isolated as Western sanctions cut it off from vital supply routes. Lithuania's blockade on the transit of goods has strained trade and forced Moscow to find costly alternatives to keep its grip tight. What was once a symbol of power is starting to look like a geopolitical liability, and Putin's ability to project dominance from this region is being tested like never before inside Kaliningrad. The mood is shifting dramatically. While the Kremlin tries to paint a picture of stability, the people living there are feeling the effects of isolation and economic hardship. The shelves that once held imported goods are now empty, prices have surged, and the cost of living has become unbearable. The once vibrant connection with Europe through trade and tourism has faded, and residents are left grappling with a sense of abandonment. Even though they remain loyal to Russia, many are beginning to question the decisions coming from Moscow. Life inside Kaliningrad today reflects a growing frustration that's hard for the Kremlin to contain. The government keeps a close eye on dissent, but whispers of discontent are spreading, and the people's patience is wearing thin. Performance has always been Putin's hallmark. He built his reputation on control, precision, and strength. Kaliningrad was supposed to be a showcase of that performance, a demonstration of Russia's power to manage a faraway territory with flawless efficiency. Yet the machinery is breaking down as supply chains slow and local governance weakens. Corruption has seeped into the administration. Money meant for infrastructure and public projects disappears before it reaches the people and the military. The backbone of Kaliningrad's identity is showing fatigue. The once proud Baltic fleet is struggling with aging equipment and low morale. Putin's performance in managing this key region now looks less like a masterful strategy and more like a desperate attempt to hold together something that's slipping away one piece at a time. When it comes to safety, Kaliningrad has long been considered one of the most secure areas under Russian control. Its defense systems are formidable, with missiles capable of reaching every major European capital within minutes. Yet the nature of modern warfare has changed, and the real threats no longer come just from the sky. They come from information networks, cyber attacks, and economic isolation. Russia's so-called fortress is no longer impenetrable. Western intelligence services have exposed vulnerabilities in communication systems and cyber defenses, while NATO's steady expansion in the Baltic region has encircled the territory in a ring of caution. What was meant to be Russia's sword in Europe is now surrounded by shields, making its position increasingly fragile. Kaliningrad's safety may still exist on paper, but in reality, it's more uncertain than ever. Kaliningrad's importance has always been more than military. It carries symbolic and strategic value that goes to the heart of Russian identity. It's the only part of Russia that lies deep in Europe, the only reminder of the Soviet Union's once vast reach that extended from the Pacific Ocean to the heart of Germany. For Putin, it represents the dream of a powerful and untouchable Russia, a message to the world that his influence cannot be contained. But every year that passes under economic pressure and international isolation, that message becomes harder to deliver. Russia is being forced to spend enormous sums to maintain this region, sending supplies through long and expensive sea routes, pouring resources into maintaining local industries, and ensuring loyalty through financial incentives. The unique selling point of Kaliningrad was always its ability to project power cheaply and efficiently, but that advantage has vanished today. It's costing the Kremlin far more to hold on to than it's worth for the people of Kaliningrad. The situation is deeply personal. Many grew up believing they were part of a proud outpost of Russian power. But now they feel trapped between two worlds. Europe is visible just beyond their borders, but unreachable because of Moscow's growing isolation. On the other hand, Russia feels distant and detached, unable to provide stability or growth. The younger generation sees the rest of Europe moving forward, while their own future feels uncertain. Schools and hospitals suffer from shortages. The local economy depends heavily on government support, and industries that once thrived are now stagnating under sanctions. The social mood reflects a quiet desperation, a mix of loyalty and doubt, that defines many of Russia's outer regions. As for the political climate, the Kremlin's control remains strong on the surface, but there are signs of strain. The local authorities echo Moscow's propaganda, yet beneath the surface, disagreements are emerging even among officials. Some regional leaders are growing frustrated by the economic strain and the lack of autonomy, while ordinary people are more willing than before to criticize government decisions openly. Putin's grip relies heavily on fear and information control, but in a world where social media and external news still seep through the cracks, it's becoming harder to keep the truth hidden. The international dimension of Kaliningrad's struggle cannot be ignored as NATO continues to increase its presence in Poland and Lithuania. Territory is effectively surrounded by Western forces. Military exercises on its borders send a clear message to the Kremlin. The West is ready and watching closely. Any misstep could isolate Kaliningrad even further or ignite a dangerous confrontation that no one wants to see. Moscow has responded by doubling down, deploying more weapons and issuing threats. But these gestures now carry less weight. They reveal insecurity rather than confidence. The more the Kremlin tries to assert control, the more obvious its vulnerabilities become. Economically, Kaliningrad is facing one of its toughest challenges. Since the fall of the Soviet Union, the blockade and sanctions have created bottlenecks in trade, leading to shortages of essential materials and fuel. The local economy, once supported by tourism and manufacturing, now relies almost entirely on federal aid. Inflation is skyrocketing and small businesses are closing at record rates. What used to be a bustling link between Russia and Europe is now a symbol of isolation. Putin's promise to make Kaliningrad a showcase of prosperity has turned into an example of how his policies have backfired. The once proud region now survives on state support, with little room for innovation or independence. From a military perspective, the Kremlin continues to hold the region through sheer force, yet even that is being tested. Maintaining troops and equipment here is far more expensive than before. Every missile battery and every naval ship stationed in Kaliningrad is a reminder of the enormous financial burden on a nation already stretched thin by war and sanctions. Morale among troops is reportedly low as they face shortages in supplies and outdated infrastructure. What was once meant to be a display of strength is slowly becoming a logistical nightmare. The very systems designed to secure Russia's influence are becoming symbols of its overreach. If we talk about the overall performance of Putin's administration in handling Kaliningrad, it's becoming clear that control maintained by intimidation and propaganda cannot last forever. People are beginning to see the gap between what Moscow promises and what it actually delivers. Even loyal officials find themselves struggling to defend the government's failures as time goes on. The illusion of complete control begins to fade, revealing the weaknesses of a system that depends on fear rather than trust. The price of maintaining Kaliningrad's loyalty is no longer sustainable. The Kremlin must now spend billions to keep the region functioning. Money that could have been used elsewhere in Russia goes into propping up a territory that feels increasingly detached from the mainland. The more Putin spends, the more obvious it becomes that this is not strength, but desperation. His desire to preserve the image of control has turned Kaliningrad into a costly burden for the Russian economy and a political liability for his leadership. In the end, the story of Kaliningrad is not just about one region, it's about the limits of power. It's a reflection of how far Putin's Russia has gone in trying to maintain influence in a changing world, and how even the strongest fortress can begin to crumble from within. The world is watching closely as events unfold here, because the fate of Kaliningrad may reveal more about the future of Russia than any battlefield. The Kremlin may still hold it by force, but control based on fear and propaganda cannot last forever. The cracks in Putin's grip are widening, and once those cracks turn into breaks, they will be impossible to repair. What happens next in Kaliningrad may well define the next chapter in Europe's shifting balance of power and the slow unraveling of one of the world's most enduring authoritarian regimes.